Hello folks, this is Fat Guy Flies RC coming to you from the man cave, and you can see inverted is the FMS AVANTI 90mm, the 18th anniversary edition, and she's on my Hobby King balance stand, balanced pretty well perfectly. All right, so let's go ahead and this is the radio rates and radio rates and CG setup video. So we're going to go ahead and show you that. And since we were already talking about CG, let's go ahead and talk about CG. CG is 125 to 135 millimeters back from the leading edge root. Now that's not the edge of the wing, but it's where the wing actually touches the fuselage here, straight back. All right, now to give you a graphical display, obviously other than just being there, if you look on the underside of the wing, it actually says CG right there. And you look at your wheels, okay? There's that line right there. Well, right on either side of that line where that CG, that's where she CG's at. To show you on the top side of the wing, let's go ahead and get the CG out of the way. If you look, the black line here that comes in, if you look right there, I've got two red marks. So if you plant your finger right in front of that black line on either side, that is the CG mark if you want to do it from the underside. So do it just like we had it on the stand there. Now, you know, there's always some variances, but that's pretty well perfect right there. Okay, all right, so to show you this way, okay, put my finger there, put my finger there, because this is what you do at the field, and she pretty perfect. Of course, your fingers are constantly moving, even though you don't think they are. Put the gear down. Okay, let's put my fingers back on those marks and see what that does with the gear down. Okay, still pretty much CG perfectly. So the gear up, gear down doesn't really make all that much of a difference. All right. Now that we have talked about CG, let's actually show you where that equates to the inside. Now you've seen the outside. If you look at the inside of the plane, all right, if you look, I've got a 5000 HRB. So if you take two finger links, put it right in there, and that's pretty much where that 5000 starts. You see how I made a line there. So see that hole, where that cutout is for the cooling for the underside? If you put your battery up right on the back half of that, or the back 3/4 of that hole there, that's where you want to put your 5000 that further back. But like I say, there are also CG marks on the underside of the wing. All right. Now in the build video, I told you I wasn't going to hook up any control surfaces until I did the radio setup. Well, I've already done all the radio setup off camera, okay? But I did leave one control surface undone so that I can show you that procedure. And the procedure I'm about to show you works on all control surfaces. And it's the rudder. Okay, I've left the rudder purposely undone. So let's get our, right there, okay? Move the camera just a little bit. And by the way, should not have a problem with my camera when I'm doing these man cave videos, me getting louder or less or more as I get closer in, because I'm now recording with the same mic that we use at the field. Now, if you look, that rudder is pretty darn close to the lineup of the structure there, the bottom of the fuselage, okay? So, we put the bent in the outermost hole of your servo, okay? Sorry, I got my head in your way, okay? Fish that in there, okay? And then drag it around, okay? And let's lay it on that ball. Lay it right on that ball. Okay, if I lay it and kind of push down that ball, it pretty well, if I lay it on there, that's pretty close. I mean, if you look right down, that's pretty close there. So that's that that control rod was great. Now, if I laid that ball on there and it kicked this way a little bit or it kicked this way, then I would twist in or screw in or unscrew this ball link until I was happy with it. So I'm going to lay that on there, and I'm thinking though that when I press that on there, it's going to kick it a little bit in. Let's see. Nope. Did it perfectly. All right, so that's the procedure, okay? All you have to do is hook up lay the ball link on there, or if this was a regular clevis, put it in the hole, whatever hole you're going to put it in, and look at it. Is it lined up, okay? And if it's too far one way or too far the other way, then you would screw the clevis in or out based upon which direction you're wanting it to go until it lines up perfectly centered. Okay, if you look at all my control surfaces now, okay, everything is perfectly centered. That doesn't mean that the flight are perfectly trimmed. That does not mean, however, that this plane is trim and ready for flight. It just simply means that it is bench trim. And I've said this in many, many videos, and I said it in the build video. Just because it's bench trim does not mean it's flight trim. This is your starting point. This is where you're going to take off. Sorry about that. Had a phone call come in, so I had to take the call, and we're recording on the phone. All right. Now, as you can see, everything is nice and trim. Like I said, that's bench trim. Until you fly the plane and get her up in the air, then you'll know whether she's trimmed or not. Now, I installed, okay, actually before I go any further, I told, if some of y'all have been watching my posts and been watching my unboxing build and seen other posts about this, you may have noticed that Fat Guy Flies RC made some very negative remarks in regards to this plane, okay? I did my unboxing video, y'all saw that. I did my build video, y'all saw that. Well, after that build video, that night, that was 3 or 4 nights ago, I normally will do the radio setup on my own, and then I come back and film it and show you what I did, and we go like I'm doing now. Well, during that process, I discovered 2 things that were right and wrong about the plane. Number 1, you have a lead that is not marked in any way. It's got a white wire, just a regular servo lead that's unmarked, that coming from the back. That lead is for your for a future thrust reverse or thrust vectoring if you want to add that option. That lead's already there, okay? Whatever you do. I saw that and I said, oh, it must have come undone from the board and plugged it in an empty hole, okay? What I thought was the elevator on the control board. I'll show you that in a minute, okay? And then I went ahead and hooked up all my control surfaces minus the rudder like I was going to show, okay? And then the way I set my flaps up is where the flaps are all the way up, okay, all the way up now, the way the servos were, okay, I want to show you, and this is something you need to pay attention to, okay. If you look where that flap servo is. See where it ends up there? Okay, now if I put flaps back to, say, takeoff position, see how that went back? Now let's go back, put flaps back up. Okay, now there's still about a 1/4 inch of gap there. I had these servos extended all the way down where they are actually digging into the foam equally on both sides. Now I thought, okay, well that's flaps up, and I left them alone with them being driven like that. Okay, they were holding those positions, shoving this linkage into that foam. I didn't even pay attention to how far in I had those, okay? Meanwhile, these servos are now overextended and they're being shoved into the foam, okay? I didn't see how far I had them pushed in there, okay? So, then I went to put the ailerons on, got them all centered, made everything nice and centered, minus the rudder. Came back, and my flaps, they work perfectly now, right? One was working, one was not. One would go up, one would not. One would go up a little bit, the other would go down. And I basically damaged the circuit. I thought I damaged the circuitry on both of these. But luckily, they're very hardy servos, and they put up with that abuse. And then I said, oh, stupid plane. Still not understanding what I'd done wrong, and had not discovered about that lead for the thrust vectoring. Okay, and I thought, well, you know, brand new plane, they rushed it into production, and here I've gone, you know, put this thing together, and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Fired off, took the plane apart, put it all back in the box, was beyond mad. I was livid. Okay. Fired off a nasty letter to FMS saying, you rushed that into production. I cannot go any further with the radio video now. You know, you took $569 of my money only for a plane to have bad servos, flap servos, and yada 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 yada. Okay, and yeah, there are a few dents and dings, but that's normal coming out. And I played that up too and said it's got all kinds of issues, and you know, it's got these dents and dings, and both flap servos are bad, and yada yada yada. And I'd also had hooked up that phantom lead, thinking I had undid it while putting the plane together. Okay, now let's boil that down to what actually happened. Number one, I overextended the servos, locked them into an overextended state for like 15 minutes where they got hot. Okay, luckily they did not damage. Okay, so then I realized what I had done afterwards. I went to work, started thinking about it. You know what? I think I did that wrong. I'm thinking I'm at mistake. Came home from work that morning, after working 12 hours, sat down here in the man cave with my uniform on, and realized what I did. Okay, backed them off just a 1/4 inch and adjusted the servo linkages, okay, to where now they're nice and flat, but the servos are not overextended, and they still work perfectly, but one was a little lagging. I thought, well, wait a minute, they're not getting hot, they're working the way they're supposed. One's a little bit slower than the others, but they're both okay, I guess I damaged, I'm good. Then I discovered that phantom lead, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's plugged in to the elevator or plugged in on the board, I can't tell, and that's probably for that thrust vectoring. So I unplugged it, okay, and lo and behold, I thought, well, I'll find out what's not working when I unplug it. Well, I pulled it out, I can't remember where I plugged it in at, unplugged it, and saw that it just goes right back to the thing. It's not labeled in any way, and it goes all the way to the back, and I thought, everything still worked, and looky there. And the servo and the flap servos work evenly, properly, the way they're supposed to. Everything else works. The gear go up and down. Everything works the way it's supposed to. The thrust, you know, everything works. Reverse function, everything works. I said, okay, that's that thrust vectoring. And if you plug it in the control board without wiring it into, because you're going to wire that into your rudders and your there'll be a kit. You'll wire that into your elevators and your rudder for the thrust vectoring. If you hook that up, you're confusing that board, thinking it's got the thrust vectoring nozzle, and it made a little weirdness. And the only thing I can explain, it made the flaps now. So as soon as I unplugged it, and left it alone, everything works perfectly now. So again, I've already apologized to FMS through my letter. I retracted my bad review that I put on their FMS website, told everybody I was wrong. Everywhere on every website that I put a negative that's saying, hey, mine was crap, it had bad servos, blah, 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 had a whole host of other problems. I tried to remove those remarks, or I put a retractment statement in, and if I missed one, I'm very sorry, but I hear the public say there's nothing wrong with the plane. Just pay attention to the instructions. I didn't say anything about it, but just pay attention to what you're doing. If it's not already plugged in, if it's that lead, don't plug it in. Okay, don't overextend your servos. Do not overextend your servos, because you could fry them. I got very fortunate, and of course, even though it was Labor Day, or because after midnight, even though it was after Labor Day, they sent me return labels to ship it out back to them. We'll replace the plane. Whatever you want us to do, we're going to make it right. FMS customer service is wonderful. I said no, I'm good. Thank you. Okay, enough of that. Okay, you've got my point. I made a mistake, And you'd think with all these planes and all of my experience, I would not have made such a rookie setup mistake, but I did. And none of us are infallible, okay? All right, now back to the plane. We've talked about CG, we've talked about the danger and we've talked about how to get everything centered and trimmed, bench trimmed, okay? Let's talk about this circuitry board for just a minute, okay? And to show you what I have done. Now, leave over that circuitry board, everything that controls your doors, the sequence of the doors, it controls your flaps, it controls everything. Don't mess with it. All the leads that you need to plug into your receiver are all labeled and come across the front. Now I've got an AR 830T, I don't remember. It's an 8-channel Spectrum receiver upgraded to AS3X Plus, and it has 8 channels. It's got Safe Select and it's got AS3X and all that. I don't remember the actual, I know it's got a T on the end. I'm sorry, but y'all know it's the 8-channel Spectrum receiver. It's got everything, okay? Telemetry and all that. I've got one wire actually poking through the inlet there, okay, and hot glued in place, and then I've got another wire coming up and going straight along this way. So you got one going back and one coming straight up for a 90 degrees. Like I say, leave the circuitry board alone, leave everything plugged in as it is, okay? Now you may find one of your light wires is undone. Right here at the very, very front, let me see if I can get you in here, okay? Right up front there, you'll see a place to plug in lights, okay? It's the second port is where you're going to plug that light in with the red or the signal wire towards the inside, the black to the outside. That's all you may have to plug in, and I may have unplugged that when I took it out of the box. But if you do, it's on the left side there. Second one, now this front one here, this front plug, don't leave it alone. I don't know what that goes to. It might go to that where you plug in that, properly plug in the thrust vectoring. I don't know. Okay, now, we already talked about CG, we're going over that. Now, the rates in the book, okay, let's talk about rates. The rates in the book are given to you in millimeters, okay? So, I've already done the math to show you what that equates to. And if you do Spectrum, you're going to do your rates in percentages. You know, 100% throws, 30% throws, and you know that much expo and all that. But they give it to you in millimeters. So I've already worked that out, and I can show you what that graphically looks like, okay, on the model now, okay? All right, we're going to move the camera just a little bit, so hold on, we're going for a little ride here. I want to show you my rates, okay? Rates and expo. Now, for my low rates, aileron is 75% with 30% expo. Oh, by the way, 30% expo on everything. My mid rates on aileron are 85, 30% expo. High rate is 100 with 30% expo. Okay? Now, elevator. High rate 100, mid rate 85, low rate 75. Now the elevator, the rudder is the only thing I deviated from the book. Low rate 65, mid rate 70, high rate 75. Okay? And I'm going to change this because I didn't think I have enough. I'm changing that to 100% throws. Okay? I like a lot of rudder. I like a lot of rudder. Okay? All right. Now, I've told you the throws. Now, what that gave you in the book, it says for elevator, the high rate is 14 millimeters up. Well, for Spectrum, to show that too, because the first one's the high rate for me is 100%, and that's what that looks like. Okay? And they say the low rate for elevator, okay, is 10 millimeters up and down. Okay? Well, that's 75% on Spectrum. So high is 100, low is 75 for your elevator. Okay, for high elevator book was 14 millimeters, low was 10 millimeters. Okay, ailerons, because they're a different shape, the geometry is a little bit different. High rates on my ailerons, okay, I've already given the numbers, but I'm going to tell you my low rate was 75%, right? Okay, according to the book aileron, your low rate is 12 millimeters. Well, that's what low rate looks like. Okay, and then higher rate according to the book is 16 millimeters. Okay, well, that's 100% on a spectrum, and that's what that looks like. And now the rudder, I did, their high rate is 22. Okay, well, I went at 100%. I just changed my own. Okay, I like 100%, so I don't even know what that equates to. I like a lot, you know, and so that's just that. I won 100%, 30% expo, and my mid rate on my rudder is 70, and my low rate's 65. Okay, that's low rate, that's mid rate, and that's high rate. I like a lot of rudder. If you find the rudder to be too twitchy, or any control surface you find to be too twitchy when you're flying, just dial in. But you're happy with that much deflection, just dial a little more expo in, and that'll make it dealing with a little bit easier. Now let's talk about flaps. Okay, hopefully you can see the flaps. Flap settings on this model, according to the book, your flaps, your high rate, or it's your flaps all the way down, your landing flaps, okay, are 50 millimeters, okay, and then takeoff, or your second position, would be 40 millimeters, okay. Does not say anything about a flap to elevator mix, okay, and I don't think I've got one put in. No, I do have a little bit of one. All right, so what that equates to have your flaps all the way up, because you don't want to overdrive them now, you want to put them at negative 90% instead of, on spectrum, instead of a negative 100%. But just adjust your linkages to where the servos do not go all the way into the foam. Let them back off about a ¼ inch, and that's your flaps up, and that's 90%, negative 90%. Okay, then for my takeoff flaps, okay, remember they said that's going to be 40 millimeters, okay, a deflection of 40 millimeters. On a spectrum, that's going to be a positive 0 with no flap elevator mix. However, we're going to see how that works on the field. And then for landing flaps, okay, is a positive 90% with a 4% down elevator mix. I'm going to see how that works, okay, and we'll go from there. I may have to adjust that elevator mix, put a little more in for takeoff, or a little more in for landing, or maybe a little less. We'll just have to wait and see, or it may not need any. That rudder that elevator is a good ways behind, so it may not need much flat mix at all. And remember, with a jet or anything that moves fast, you don't want much, because the faster you go, the more dramatic the movement shows. All right, well, that's my flap settings, and we've gone over rates, we've gone over CG. All right, now I have set this up with AS3X Plus. Okay, well, that's before I even installed it. I also installed the KM model afterburner. I'll put a link in the description of the video where I how to install a KM model afterburner. I installed it on the FMS Viper, which is around here somewhere. Their 15-year anniversary Viper. I showed it how to install it on that. I think it was on the Viper, and I'll put a link to that one in so you can show, but the procedure was exactly the same. It is easier to undo the EDF unit, to pull it out, attach your afterburner, run your wire, attach your afterburner, zip tie everything down, and then hook it up. KM models do not provide Ys, because you'll have to tie it into your throttle. I wish they did. I have told them that's what they need to do. Even if you charge extra $2 for the burner, a good quality Y is definitely needed. All right. Okay, we talked about rates. We've talked about CG. We've talked about what kind of radio I've got in here. I think I know I'm leaving stuff out. I do have the flaps on a 2-second deployment, and you do have to remember that the gear are sequenced, so those doors have to open and close. They do take a little while. Okay, remember, just because it's bench trim, okay, everything looks nice and level, does not mean it's flight trim. You don't know until you fly it whether she's trimmed or not, because there are little minuscule defects or geometric shapes in the foam that you may not be able to tell in the naked eye, but when you're flying it becomes prevalent, and therefore may affect the actual trimming of a plane. But this is having a bench trim is where you want to start, because I may fly this and realize it needs a small amount of up elevator all the time just because of the way the elevator is designed. You know, you just don't know until you fly. Okay, I know I'm leaving stuff out. I didn't go over forward programming and all that. I've got dozens of videos on how to do forward programming. That no different with this one. The exact same thing. I have my thrust reverse. Oh, we do need to talk about thrust reverse. I have my thrust reverse on aux 7. Okay, auxiliary 7, and that way, put my throttle on. It's going out front, and then like there. Now it's coming out the back. Okay, so that's all that is. Okay, I mean, I've got it. You put it on a 2-position or a 3-position switch, on or off, and you can hear the difference in the. You'll hear it to stop. ESC is calibrated, no problem. Obviously the fan's fine, I don't have to worry about balancing it. I've had her out in the driveway, drove her around, the fan sounds great and solid, doesn't sound like it's in any way out of balance or anything. It sounds nice and even. If it's out of balance, you'd hear a high pitch kind of a wobble or whine, and it just wouldn't sound right. If you've flown many EDFs, you know how they're supposed to sound. Over the features of the plane, I have 2 complaints that are genuine complaints. Okay, number 1, this around here, because some people will set their model on their back of their thrust here, or their back of their exhaust, and set them all in the corner like that. This needs to have a plastic ring, or this is just bare foam. Okay, hard, good quality foam, but it's just bare foam. This should have a plastic ring around it. Okay, I'm sure someone could come up with a 3D printed ring and put that on there. The other thing is these inlets, okay, in the front here, they're just bare foam too. They did the same thing on the Futura and a lot of these other planes. They need to have protection. They need to have a layer of plastic over them. And I'm sorry, but you've got protection in so many other areas of this plane, and that's one of them. Because when you grab this plane, a lot of people shove their thumb under there and pick it up like I do. Well, I'm going to keep hitting that with my thumb, and I'm going to dent the foam, and come on, FMS. I mean, you got, for this price point, that should have had that on there. Okay, now the nose cone they're getting away from the magnets, I guess. They're getting a really strong clasp in there, and it pops into place. It ain't coming off. These air channel things were already glued in. The plane looks amazing. It has a very nice gloss to it. I am going to give it a clear coat. Someone was wanting me to show a clear coat, how I'm going to do that. Well, it's actually, I don't even have to show it. It's so very, very simple. Okay, number 1, I'll put a link to the video that I already have on it. But because this thing has actual mechanical hinges, no pinch hinges here, okay, all I'm going to do is tape off the canopy. Okay, I'm just going to tape off this canopy, okay, to where I don't get any of the spray. Put the canopy back on it, and I'm going to give this a nice light dusting over the top, flip it, do the bottom, you know, and I'm not too worried about if it gets in the hinges, because these are all mechanical hinges. Now, if you don't want too much to get down in the workings of the hinges, but it should be fine. And I'm going to give it a nice clear coat, let it dry, you know, and then I usually just do 1 coat, 1 good coat, and that's usually all you need. And then about a year from now, I'll do another coat. It'll do exactly the same. It does wear off over time. Think of it as back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s and 60s, you bought a car, you had to put a wax job on it, and you had to keep a wax job on it in order to, before the invention of a lot of clear coats, the really good clear coats they came out with. Well, think of this as just a clear coat protectant, okay? It will wear off over time. It just protects the foam. Little things like your fingernails, stuff like that. It helps with that. Now, if you take a hammer to it, no, it's not gonna protect that. Anyways, the other thing, let's look at the closest plane in the class. Let's look at the comparison of size, and that would be the, oh yes, and it does have nice hard plastic protector, because when you set the plane down with no radio or no battery in it, it's going to rock back on there. Well, I got a battery in there. Let's look at the closest plane in comparison in size that you can get out there right now, and that would be the free wing Avanti S, which is 80 millimeter, and it's just a little bit smaller, okay? But I want to show you the actual size comparison. Okay. So you can see, this is sitting to get it even back there. The FMS Avanti is just a little bit bigger. Not a whole lot bigger, but a little bit bigger. And this one's about $100 more. Okay, this will run you, well actually no, it's $169 more. This is $399, this is $569. Okay? And I paid $399 for this one, and I paid $569 for this one. Just, nope, didn't get a break. So, but that's okay. That's okay. Let me pay for these planes and buy these planes, okay? And then I'll get a review, and I'll show you what, and I'll make the mistakes with them, and I'll make the triumphs with them, and I'll do the good and the bad with them. And then you can say, okay, now I have a little more education. And don't just take my word. There are going to be numerous videos out there. Get a whole collection of videos under your belt that you've watched before you go out and pay $569, okay? YouTube pays me money every month. Okay, I get anywhere from, sometimes I get $300, sometimes I get $400, and that nowhere near keeps up to what I put out each month towards new models and batteries and everything, but it does help. So I do have some compensation coming in from YouTube. Also, I'm now an affiliate with FMS, and so another part of compensation to help me pay for this stuff, so I keep bringing these videos to you, and which I'll do no matter what. If I can afford it or not, I'm still going to. If you want to buy this plane, please use my link. It won't cost you a penny more. Okay, and you'll help me out. I'll get a, I don't know, 3%, 4%, I don't know what it is. There's a percentage I'll get back on the sale. So, okay. I try to be as open and honest about these things as I can. But plane's $569, it cost me $569. So if I crash it, that's $569 out of my back pocket, just like it would be out of yours. But let me fly it, you watch me, and if I make mistakes, you learn from them, okay? And if I do good things, you learn from them. No matter what, we're all winning, okay? This is the best hobby that I think the good Lord ever created, in my opinion. I love it. I love it. I have a passion for it, and I enjoy sharing it. God bless each and every one of y'all. This is the Avanti 18th anniversary of the Avanti S from FMS, a 90 millimeter, and hopefully in a matter of about 12 hours, I will have this thing in the air. God bless y'all, and don't forget, faith, family, and friends, God is great, and Avanti S's from FMS 90 millimeter. Bye-bye.